Adam Schefter labeled the Miami Dolphins as a potential wild card team to draft Shedeur Sanders. So, we got to talk about that. Also, Albert Breer posed a really good question. Have the Miami Dolphins and their window to win, has it closed on them? We will discuss that. Also, Mel Kiper's latest mock that he dropped today. We'll talk about 30 visits the Dolphins are having and so much more as we inch ever so closer to the 2025 NFL Draft. Do me the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you are new, and let's get into this.
Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it!
You have got to be kidding me.
Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown.
And he will score! Deep upfield, down the near side, man open. Touchdown!
The run from Tua Tagovailoa.
Touchdown!
He's going deep. It's going over the touchdown again.
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go! What is good, Finn Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back for another one. Appreciate each and every one of you coming through on this episode, sponsored by Clean the World. And listen, Clean the World, they work with over 8,300 hospitality partners to divert their soap bars and plastic amenities from landfills and recycle the collected soap into new bars. By doing so, Clean the World helps reduce pollution, save water, and decreases the carbon footprint of thousands of hotels across the globe, while helping improve the lives of women, children, and communities. Since it was established in 2009, Clean the World has distributed over 80 million bars of soap. The organization has also diverted 9 million pounds of plastic amenity bottles and over 29 million pounds of total waste from landfills, and helped Clean the World Foundation provide an estimated 17 billion individual hand washes to those in need across the globe. By recycling soap and other discarded hygiene products, Clean the World saves lives with items that traditionally end up in landfills. You can donate or even volunteer to help Clean the World in their mission and their cause at cleantheworld.org. That's cleantheworld.org. All right, thank you each and every one of you for coming through on this episode. Let's get into this, and let's get into it real quick. We got a lot to talk about today, all right? We got quite a bit. First thing I want to talk about, I see this rumor floating around from one of these, one of these X accounts that's like a NFL rumor account, but it has zero credibility. I'm going to tell you right now, the Eagles are not trading for Tyreek Hill. I mean, you could pretty much put that to bed. They have like the most expensive wide receiver room in the NFL. They're not going to be able to add a $30+ million aging Tyreek Hill to that wide receiver room. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. So I don't even know why. I don't even know how they thought that room would pop off. Like, what are you doing, sending Devontae Smith back in return? So all these people even entertaining that, I don't know why you would. Now, reminder, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock on this channel, we'll be live for the episode 2 of the starting lineup with myself and Dougley Durong. Man, I'm counting down the days. I cannot wait until y'all see what we got cooked up for the regular season. Gonna blow minds. Gonna absolutely blow minds. So, and we're gonna be talking about Tyreek tomorrow. There's something I do want to talk about specifically with Tyreek. and I'm going to talk to Dougley about it, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to talk about it a little bit more in depth tomorrow. So make sure you tune in. Plus, we'll talk about things around the NFL, a few other Dolphins, topics. So we got a lot to talk about, me and Dougley, tomorrow. So make sure you tune in 7 p.m. Eastern right here for the finish line. For the starting lineup. I know people have asked where the finish line is. Basically, ball game is, he's a track and field coach. He's got meets every Wednesday till like basically the draft. So, maybe at the end of the month or maybe in May, the finish line will return. We'll see. It all depends on that schedule. And then as we go towards the season, we haven't figured out the night the starting lineup will be going. It may be its own entity and its own YouTube channel by the time the regular season starts. That's for sure. But we're looking at a Wednesday or Thursday night. So the finish line, I'm going to have to, just move things around, and the schedule on the finish line, that may change this regular season. So just be on the lookout for that. All right. So let's get into something I want to talk about as we continue my opening thoughts of the show. And that's Mel Kiper's latest mock draft. He dropped it today. And, at 13, he had the Miami Dolphins taking Jahdae Barron. And he even, acknowledges Teron Armstead's retirement, talking about how it makes it interesting and how the Dolphins ranked 28th in pass block win rate last season. But he did acknowledge they drafted Patrick Paul, right? And he basically says, they use this cornerback 2 spot opposite of Jalen Ramsey, where either Storm Duck, Cam Smith, or Ethan Bonner is currently slated to start. Now, for you wondering, he had Will Johnson going at 11 to the San Francisco 49ers. So Will Johnson was not even on the board when this selection happened. And then at number 48, he had the Miami Dolphins taking Darius Alexander. He said Miami still needs pass protection, and Tyler Booker would have been perfect had he fallen one more spot. Rather than the reach, the Dolphins could take another big need. And he basically, goes into Darius Alexander for this. I'm going to tell you this. This would kind of be underwhelming to me for a second. Now, a few reasons. Number one, if you go and look at that mock draft, okay, Jonas Savannah goes at 45 to the Colts. Booker goes at 47. I think that's how it worked. Yeah, I know Savannah went 45. Booker went 47. I might have got the team wrong. It might not have been Colts. But anyways, Savannah went 45. 47 went Tyler Booker. Here's my issue. Darius Alexander's like my DT8. Like, I like him. Don't get me wrong. I like him. Like I said, in my top 15 DTs, the lowest grade I had was my 15th DT was graded, at the beginning of the 5th round. It was Jamari Caldwell, I believe. My issue here is who's on the board. Now, the way the board was falling, honestly, if you go and look at his mock, I would trade back from 13, the way his board falls. It doesn't fall in favor of Miami. I would have traded back. There's a couple guys still on the board I would have taken. So I would have, under his mock, the way his board falls, I would have traded back to the early 20s, and I would have got either Kenneth Grant or I would have got Donovan Jackson. He had Donovan Jackson going like in the late 20s, but I would have taken Donovan Jackson in the early 20s instead. And then I say that because the way his board fell at 50 to Seattle, he had Savon Revel going, and I would prefer a trade back with Kenneth Grant or Donovan Jackson in the 20s, and then taking Savon Revel at 48. And by trading back to the 20s, you've probably added at least one more pick in between that 48 to 98 range where we go 50 picks without making one. So I would have done something like that. I've said this. I'm not a huge fan of, I like Jahdae Barron, but I'd trade back a bit because I think you could still get him. I really do. So, yeah, I don't know. So the Seattle Seahawks, they took Savon Revel at 50. I would have rather taken him at 48 than Darius Alexander. I think Savon Revel is going to be a stud. People forget how elite is. I mean, you guys have heard me talk about it with some of the draft people I've had on. People forget how elite that 2023 tape is. They really, really do. So I would have taken Savon Revel at 48. And yeah, Jahdae Barron, I just would have traded back. And if Jahdae Barron's still on the board, take him. If not, Kenneth Grant or Donovan Jackson. That's what I would have done. I would have added another pick to that crop. Go look at his mock draft. You'll see there's plenty of names on the board that plenty of us would prefer to the names he made. I just feel like, I don't know. I just feel like, I like Darius Alexander, but again, when you go read his mock and you see what's on the board, you're probably going to feel the same way that I do. Like you probably are. It's kind of, it's underwhelming. Let's put it that way. It really is. Now, another interesting thing, I told all you guys to sell on Walter Nolan in the first. He had him dropping out of the first. And I've also told you guys, I bet you Josh Simmons go to the Chiefs. He had Josh Simmons going to the Chiefs. Absolutely hilarious. He also had Luther Burden falling out of the first too, which I thought was very interesting. Kenneth Grant fell to 43. You know what I mean? So yeah, now we know Mel Kiper ain't exactly the rightest all the time. You know what I mean? I'll be honest. It's just, it could have been better. I would be okay with that poll, but I would be somewhat disappointed with that poll. I don't know. And I like Jahdae Barron. He's my third corner, but I'm telling you, Savon Revel didn't get hurt this year. He'd be corner number 3. He might even be battling for corner number 2. Special player. Special player. And I think what would disappoint me there too is, if you don't make a trade back and you take Jahdae Barron and Darius Alexander, it's Eichenberg and Borum season at left guard. And oh my God. Ugh. I get sick just thinking about it right now. Yeah, Tyreek Williams was on the board. Tyreek and Darius Alexander, it is what it is to me. You know what I mean? Like, you can go either way there, really, for me. I don't know. Now, like I said, a lot of the best guards were, gone by this point, right? Like, I'm pretty sure everyone was like, Zabel was off the board by that time. Obviously Jonas Savannah. Yeah, Zabel went like 22. Donovan Jackson went 24. Connerly went 25. Let's just stick with guards. So Gray Zabel went 22. Donovan Jackson went 24. There really wasn't a guard run from there until right before the Dolphins picked. Savannah went 45 to the Colts in his mock. And then 47, Booker went to the Arizona Cardinals. So interesting, he had Tyler Booker falling that draft. Falling that far in the draft. Like, that's very interesting to me. And I get, it's the athletic profile. You know what I mean? And I do believe CJ West and Alfred Collins were still on the board when we selected. And I would prefer Alfred Collins there over Darius Alexander. What was interesting, though, is the first 2 picks of the first round, Cleveland Browns take Tyler Shuck and New York Giants take Jalen Milroe. I thought that was super, super interesting. And he had Shedeur falling to 9 to the Saints. So, and then Dart went 26 to the Rams, which is a team I've told y'all I love that fit for him. I absolutely love that fit for him. I'm a big fan of that fit. And for you guys wondering about, well, what about safety? Nick Emanowari, He went at 19, so he was gone. Malachi Starks went to Baltimore at 27, so he was off the board. And then the other safeties that went before us was, did Xavier Watts go before us? I don't think Xavier Watts went before us. I think Xavier Watts went after us. I'm just trying to look. Yeah, Xavier Watts went 62 to Buffalo. So there you go. All right. Speaking of the draft and speaking of Shedeur Sanders, and yes, I'd rather take Xavier Watts than at 48 than Darius Alexander, for all you guys wondering. And again, Alfred Collins too. So anyways, yeah, to the Bills would suck. Bro, never mind. Malachi Starks to the Ravens to pair with Kyle Hamilton. Are you kidding me? Anyways, Adam Schefter. I'm surprised no one picked this up. I'm surprised no one really talked about it. Adam Schefter was asked about potential wild card scenarios for Shedeur Sanders. And, you know, he mentioned the Miami Dolphins. So, let's play this clip for you guys, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. And you'll see here why he mentions the Miami Dolphins too. He gives you a reason.
Expected, non-talked about scenarios. Miami has so much money tied up in Tua that after this year, there's a way out of that contract with the health questions. Like maybe, again, I'm not telling you they're doing it. We're talking and imagining. I don't think it's likely, but I'm not completely dismissing it. I don't think Arizona's likely, but there have been questions about Kyler Murray. There have been questions about the owner not being a huge fan.
Mm-hmm.
What if all of a sudden they take Shedeur Sanders and then they puts them in a position where they can move on from Kyler Murray? Los Angeles Rams, Matthew Stafford. Again, this is, to me, going to be the great question of round, where does Shedeur Sanders go? Because it doesn't look like 2 or 3. So is he going 9 to New Orleans, 21 to Pittsburgh? Is he going to the Browns or Giants who trade back up? Or is there a wild card scenario out there that we don't see, that we haven't talked about, that we're missing the way that many people missed last year?
This is a good point.
Michael Penix and the Atlanta Falcons.
That's a good point. And that's a strong point. Everyone missed Atlanta because they added Cousins with Penix. Now, with Shedeur, okay, here's my thought process. Personally, I've said this. I would rather bet on the traits and the upside of a Jackson Dart. Okay? That's where I'm at. Jackson Dart is my QB2. Shedeur is my QB3. That said, go back to the regular season. The receipts are out there when we talk about Shedeur on this channel. And I've talked about it recently. Shedeur fits what you do in this offense. Now, I've said this. His accuracy, his timing, his rhythm, you know, it's not superpowers like Tua. It's not, you know, that anticipation, that timing, that accuracy, they are not superpowers like they are with Tua. They're good, but they're not. But because he has those traits in good standing, he would be a fit in this offense. I've talked about this. I talked about this during the regular season. Shedeur Sanders would be a fit in this offense. There is no question about it. Because the things that Tua does as superpowers, Shedeur is good at those things. So, I've never denied that. Now, I've also said, and remember, I just told you Jackson Dart is my number 2 guy. I've also said Dart and Shedeur are second round grades. They are not first round guys. So, I mentioned Dart because I'm being objective. I'm not being subjective. I think Cam Ward is the only guy worth a first round pick. I'm going to be honest with you. I've said this. So, listen, would it be end of the world and I'd have a crash out on stream if they took Shedeur Sanders? No. But I would say I think that's a bad use of resources in a year where you need to win. You know, we need immediate day one starters. Shedeur ain't going to come in and beat out. Now, he could beat out Zach Wilson, right? Because Shedeur is way better from structure than Zach Wilson is. So I'm not going to take that away from him. But he ain't beating Tua out in year one unless Tua gets hurt. Shedeur goes in and he's like, just doesn't give the job up. That would be like the only way. He ain't winning coming out of camp. I'll tell you that much. And, like I said, Schefter made a really good point. You have to sit here and think about wild card teams. Now, Arizona, that's a good point. Owner's not a big fan of Kyler Murray. It hasn't worked out. Do you make the move? And, at the same point, there's going to be people who don't want us to take a quarterback at 13, which I agree with. Doesn't matter who the name is. Okay. At least if they took like a Dart or Shedeur at 13, the positive you could spin from it is they are taking the contingency plan very, very seriously, which we want them to. So, see, I'm just coming from it from objective angles here. I'm playing devil's advocate. There's positives and there's negatives to taking a quarterback at 13. Now, I will also say this. Why would I take Sanders at 13 when I could try to get McCord in the 3rd or 4th and it's the same thing? He does all the things Tua does as a superpower. He does them well. Why would I not just go value-wise? Why would I just not wait till the 3rd or 4th to get a guy who can do those things well? That's what I like. That's what I feel. It just wouldn't make sense. Now I get why you'd want to take Dart in the first. And this is what's funny, me and I've been saying Rams and Dart. You saw Kiper have the Rams take Dart in his mock. If Dart is a guy that screams McVay, I kind of feel like it would be the same thing for McDaniel and even Shanahan to an extent. Like, that's another thing. Yo, I got a crazy scenario. You ready for this one? Imagine if the 49ers take Shedeur or Dart because they don't want to pay Brock Purdy. Huh? Think tank. We all didn't think the Penix because of Cousins to the Atlanta Falcons. What about the San Francisco 49ers? Think about that one for a second. And Shedeur does not have a better arm than Tua. Shedeur is going to come into the NFL and have one of the weakest arms in the NFL. Now, if you want to compare Shedeur's arm to when Tua came in the league after the hip injury, let's have the conversation. But Shedeur is going to have like the weakest arm, one of the weakest arms in the NFL, like if not the weakest arm in the NFL. Watch his deep balls, man. They wobble. Why do you think they wobble? He loses drive and they float on his deep balls. Why do you think that is? No, he doesn't create the torque or velocity that Tua does right now, where Tua's at. So I wouldn't agree with that statement whatsoever. Shedeur is at risk of coming in and having literally the weakest arm in the NFL. So, think about that for a sec, though. San Fran, that's a wild card. You want to talk about a team no one's talking about? I heard Brock Purdy's asking for $60 million. Like, $60 million. I told y'all, hey, he got hurt. We don't have crystal balls. We couldn't. But I said, it's only going to go up for Tua. And if he would have stayed healthy last year and we didn't sign him and he played, holy Jesus, you know how much would have... Anyways, we going to pay $60 million to Brock? Now, personally, I'm not a hater like all these people on Brock. I think guys like Tua and Brock have proved the pocket quarterback is never going to die in the NFL if you have certain traits in the pocket and from the pocket that are superpowers. I do believe that. And look at the kid's resume since he came to the league. Like, we're talking about, probably goes to the Super Bowl as a rookie if he doesn't get hurt. Right? He's been to multiple NFC championships, been to he should have been to 2 Super Bowls if he didn't get hurt. He's been to 1. So I think the Brock-hate is just too much. I think we are in a highlight reel NFL society right now, and people see legs, people see, I had JT O'Sullivan up here, right? And he said, remember I had him on here a couple off seasons ago. What did he say? He said, you see these guys, see it and just sling it and just throw it. How many times a game do you see guys actually do that? No, you got to anticipate it. You got to throw, 99% of NFL throws are to a spot. Because windows close fast in the NFL. The athletes are so good. There's few guys in the NFL who got arms strong enough where if they see it late, they can throw it. And even those guys still get burnt. We've seen Herbert get burnt on that. So, I don't know. Listen, and hey, imagine if Shedeur goes at 11. Push Will Johnson to me, baby. Let's go. Push Will Johnson right to my lap. Let's go. But I think that's another sneaky team to watch is San Francisco. I really do. If you're looking for a sleeper team. Obviously, the Dolphins would fall in because of Tua's injuries concerns and Shedeur fits, but Jackson Dart screams the type of guy Mike McDaniel would be looking for. In terms of, you've heard Bevel talk about it, the polar opposite of his skill set. Jackson Dart would make sense. Arizona would make sense, like Schefter mentioned. You know what I mean? I do think, add San Fran to that list. That makes sense. I don't think the LA Rams are really a sleeper team because everyone, we know how close they were to moving off Stafford. So if the right guy falls in their lap, I think we pretty much expect them to take that. I think another interesting thing for that first round too is who saw the news that Jalen Milroe got an invite to the green room. Usually that's for first round picks. Now, obviously some guys don't go in the first and then they're in the green room. They're in the green room on day 2, but Jalen Milroe got an invite to the NFL draft. I'm telling you right now, it is going to be Cam, Shedeur, Dart, and Milroe. And there's a real chance all of them go in the first round. The traits on Jalen Milroe are just too crazy. Like, if you get him right as a passer, you have something very dangerous there in Jalen Milroe. So, interesting thing to watch and develop. And you saw Mel Kiper had the Giants taking him second pick of the second round. So, yeah, I know Malik Willis, come on, brother. You cannot compare Jalen Milroe and Malik Willis. The arm is much more of a cannon. The rushing upside and the athleticism, it's much crazier. And it's much more freakish with Milroe. I keep telling y'all, and it's going to click one day with y'all. The NFL loves aliens. That's it. The NFL loves aliens. This is why we saw Ceylon Farrell get drafted as high. This is why the Dolphins traded up because they thought Deion Jordan back in the day was an alien. But this is... The NFL just loves aliens. And especially at quarterback. Right? So, yeah, I would... I don't know. Milroe is a special... That guy's a freak. He's a specimen. Whatever you want to use, call him. It's geez. So let's keep it moving. Albert Breer, in one of his recent articles, he said this about the Miami Dolphins and their window, and it included Tyreek Hill. The Miami Dolphins window. If I were the Miami Dolphins, I'd think about trading Tyreek Hill. But before we get to that, here's to Teron Armstead, who's retiring after an illustrious 12-year career. He's a good example for this time of year of why teams will gamble on traits. See, we just had this conversation. Ahead of the 2013 draft, Armstead out of Arkansas's Pine Bluff was best known for running a 4.71 40 dash at 306 pounds at the Combine. A dominant player for the FCS level. That sprint, a Combine record for offensive linemen, showed to New Orleans Saints coach Sean Payton and GM Mickey Loomis that Armstead had the explosiveness to hang in the NFL. Adding that to the clean character profile Armstead had, and New Orleans saw a worthy bet. 5 Pro Bowl selections later, the 3rd round pick paid off in turning out to be one of the best left tackles of his generation. It's a pretty cool story. The added bonus that Armstead's selection was actually announced at the draft by Saints legend Steve Gleason. Okay, so here's the other piece of it. It's a sign that the window might be closing in Miami. Armstead turns 34 this summer. Before hanging him up, he was one of 6 Dolphins, making more than $12 million per year. 3 more, Hill, Ramsey, and Bradley Chubb, will be 29 or older at the start of the camp and have missed significant time over the past few years. Meanwhile, Tua Tagovailoa is now off his rookie contract, and there is cap debt to manage from the aggressive building over the next few years. Also, it's hard to imagine either Ramsey or Chubb, when the time comes, will bring a return to help reset the team's roster. I believe Hill still can. What's more, you have a young player at his position, 25-year-old star Jalen Waddle, who could soften the blow of a potential departure. Now, it would be painful, to be sure, to lose a guy who's meant so much to how Mike McDaniel has built the program over the last 3 years. But at this point, with Armstead gone and significant questions on the roster, fingers crossed for Miami on second-year man Patrick Paul at left tackle, the hard question they have to ask themselves is whether they can win a championship with the current group. If the answer is no, and I'm not saying it is, then it makes sense for Armstead's decision to set off a plan for McDaniel and Chris Grier to rebuild around Tua on the fly. Getting a haul of picks for Hill would be a sensible place to start. Now, I don't think the Miami Dolphins are getting a haul of picks. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't see it. I see maybe you can get a 2nd and a 3rd from the right team. Maybe you can do that. But I don't see a haul of picks. And I'm going to talk about it more in depth tomorrow night on starting lineup with Dudley. But there are certain things where if he's about them, I would move off of him. And I'll talk about it more in depth tomorrow night with Dudley, but yeah, I don't know. I just don't I just don't think they see trading Tyreek Hill as addition by subtraction. I could be wrong, and they could trade him on draft night. Because if you're gonna move him, draft night is the time to move him, because it's somewhat of a shaky, weak wide receiver class. So yeah, I think that's where you could make the move. You know, like I do think that's where you could make the move. I don't know, though. I just, because now what you do is, the problem is, okay, let's say you add a 2nd and 3rd round pick, right? Now the problem becomes, for me at least, all right, now we got to use one of those picks to take a receiver somewhere? Like, I don't know. I think that's kind of, kind of shaky. I really do. So, yeah, because now we got to take like Jaden Higgins. You all know I want Savion Williams. Now all of a sudden you got to use one of those picks. And I don't know how much I'm down with that. Now because you create another need. Because, I mean, here's the thing. Like, let's be real here for a sec. Okay? None of us can expect it's Akine, Nick Westbrook Akine to now all of a sudden get boosted to wide receiver 2. You would have to draft a receiver. And that's not ideal. Like, let's be 110% real here. Like I mentioned, Savion Williams, Jaden Higgins, maybe a Trey Harris, maybe a Jalen Noel, a Kyle Williams, a Jack Besh, Alec Ayamaner. You know, maybe those guys, Jalen Royals. You know, now these become options. So, I don't know. We got enough worries right now with finding left guard, finding a running mate for Zach Seiler, finding a running mate for Jalen Ramsey, potentially adding another safety to the room. We don't have a quarterback 3. I don't want to add wide receiver to this list. Our tight ends beyond Jonnu Smith are a joke. Like, I'm already at 6. You know? We don't have a 4th running back. Ted McMillan, I like Ted McMillan, but now all of a sudden you trade. Ted McMillan ain't going to get into the 2nd, so you'd have to use 13, or if you trade back, you'd have to use that pick. So, you know, I don't know. Justin says, reason we have a QB3, not a QB2. Touche. Nothing like a dig at Zach Wilson on a Tuesday to get your blood pumping, huh? So, yeah, I think now that creates a new need. Now, if someone comes through and offers you a 1st, you know, a 3rd and a 5th, take it. But I could see them, even with a 2nd and a 3rd on the table, really thinking about it. You know? I could see it. What teams would trade for Tyreek? Well, I think a few, man. I think the Tennessee Titans, if they draft Cam Ward, they would need a weapon for Tyreek. 110%. You know, what's going on in Pittsburgh if they draft a quarterback and they want to move off Pickens because there's been a lot of stuff going on over there. The Chargers could obviously use a, you know, receiver. Denver is another team where they could certainly use another receiver. I think Green Bay can always use receivers. Let's be real here. You know what I mean? I think they could always use receivers. Arizona Cardinals could use one that you could pair with Marvin Harrison Jr. I think there's plenty of teams that could use a receiver right now. Jacksonville could use a receiver. The Patriots could, I mean, you could trade them to the Patriots. You know? But I think you look around the league, there's a lot of teams that would at the right price would probably roll the dice on a guy like Tyreek Hill. Raiders could use one. Niners could look to add someone, you know, because they lost Debo. You know, there's plenty of options, man. Plenty of options. I'm pretty sure Seattle could use one too. After getting rid of DK and Tyler Lockett. Seattle sure could use one. You know, send him to a rainy city for the rest of his career. Just depress the hell out of him for turning on you. Oh my God, that'd be hilarious. So, you know, I think there's a lot of teams you could find, you know, a trade partner with for a Tyreek Hill. It's just, again, about the price. If it's a 1st, a 3rd, and a 5th, take it. If it's a 2nd and 3rd, I could see them seriously pausing and being like, you know. Now, if it's 2 2s and a 3rd, I would do it. If it's a 2 and 2/3, I would do it. Because now all of a sudden, okay, I can take a wide receiver with one of those picks, but I still got another 2nd and a 3rd. Let's go. You know, so let's go. All of a sudden, you know, yeah, I got to use a pick on a receiver, but think about it. Between the 1st the 2 seconds I would have left, and, I would have 5 picks in the top 100 besides that. So, I would have 6 picks in the top 100, but 5 non-wide receiver picks in the top. I'd be down for that. Let's go. Hey, we're paying Waddle this kind of money. Let's see what you got. He's going to eventually have to step into the 1 role, but I don't think they're going to get that kind of offer. So let me temper expectations. Anyways, I'm going to talk far more in depth about Tyreek and my reasonings for. There's one big reason why I'd really trade Tyreek, and I'll talk about it tomorrow night with Doug. So here we go. The Dolphins, they're bringing in Penny Boone from UCF. And listen, he's had recent meetings with a bunch of teams. I expect this is a UDFA pick, I think. I do not think this is I don't think this is someone who's getting drafted. But you guys want a thumper? You guys want a guy who can drop the shoulder and, we're talking about a guy who's like, over 230 pounds. He's 6'1". So you guys want a thumper who can get you those short yardage. I mean, my boy Neil probably know him because he played for Maryland. But you want a guy who can get those short yardage situations converted for you. Penny Boone is one of those guys. Now, he didn't make my top 15 because he's a UDFA. But, I could see the UDFA intrigue. It makes sense to add that kind of profile to the room if you're going to add one. You know what I mean? So, he's a decent player. But that's your guy. If you want a nice, cheap, short yardage guy, strong downhill runner, that's a UDFA option for you. That's for sure. 110%. I do think there's going to be other guys that they like in this draft. I think they'll love Bashil Tootin if he falls to them. I honestly do. That athletic profile is just, I could see it's just going to be, man, Mike Medeo salivating over that. I could see them liking. There's another guy, a couple of guys I like. I like RJ Harvey a lot, Devin Neal, DJ Giddens, Tajay Brooks. There's options here. Damian Martinez, maybe. Dylan Sampson. You know what I mean? There's options here. Maybe you like Ollie Gordon late on day 3, or if he goes as a UDFA. There's legitimate options here for the Miami Dolphins in the 2025 NFL draft and the UDFA crop that's expected after the draft closes. So, I don't think they're going to be in on, I think Ashley GT and Amari Hampton sound like they're going in the first. I don't think they're going to be in on, Caleb Johnson, Quinshaw Judkins. I love Quinshaw Judkins and Caleb Johnson, by the way. Trayvon Henderson. I think Cam Scatabo will probably go higher than they want to invest. He'll probably go higher than where they want to invest in a running back. But I think Bashal Tootin, RJ Harvey, Devin Neal, DJ Giddens, maybe Trevor Etienne, Raheem the Rocket Sanders, Damian Martinez, Brashard Smith, Tajay Brooks. Those guys might be more in the range of where they start looking at adding a third running back. And then maybe the UDFA crop, because the board doesn't fall in favor of drafting a running back. Now, another 30 visit a lot of us will be excited about here. Former LSU tight end Mason Taylor had a visit with the Chargers on last Thursday, but he also has visits with Seattle and Cleveland, as well as a stop with his father Jason's old team in Miami. Mason Taylor, I've told you this, he is my tight end 3 behind Colson Loveland and Tyler Warren. We're talking about a legitimate ceiling. I'm going to be dropping my safety big board this week. Then after that, I'm going to drop quarterback and tight end. Then the rest of the big boards that don't make video format will be available to channel members and Patreons exclusively. So they'll get every other position that doesn't make video format and how I rank the players at each position. So, but sticking with Mason Taylor here, I've said this before, I'm on record. I think you're talking about a guy where if he becomes a every down tight end that's a capable blocker, I think you're talking about arguably the highest ceiling at tight end. I thought he wasn't utilized very well by LSU. You know, I think he could have been utilized a little bit better. So, yeah, listen, I'm a fan of Mason Taylor. If he's there at 48, which I don't think he will be, that's a player you seriously consider because the upside is so real. So real with that guy. Unbelievably real. So I'm a fan of Mason Taylor. Now, a little bit more on Mason Taylor, as well as some Canes set to come and audition for the Miami Dolphins. All right. A flurry of prospects who attended high school or college in South Florida will convene at Dolphins headquarters on Friday for the team's annual local day, where they will audition in front of coaches and executives. Some of the more highly regarded prospects are invited to a Thursday night dinner with Dolphins officials, and one local prospect of prominence is beating them all to the punch. LSU tight end Mason Taylor, the former Fort Lauderdale St. Thomas Aquinas star and son of Dolphins legend and UM assistant coach Jason Taylor. Mason Taylor will visit Dolphins offices on Wednesday, according to a source. Because he's a top prospect of the position, Taylor is spending more time alone with the Dolphins than many of the local prospects. But because he attended high school in Broward County, he will not count among the team's 30 permitted on-campus visits with players who don't have South Florida ties. Penn State's Tyler Warren, Michigan's Colson Loveland, and UM's Elijah Arroyo, who has been thoroughly scouted by the Dolphins, are the top tight ends in this year's draft. In his final mock released Tuesday, ESPN's Mel Kiper has Warren going 10th, Loveland 4th, Arroyo 42nd, and Taylor 55th. The 6'5" Taylor, who had 55 catches for 546 yards, just one drop last season, is an ascending tight end with a plus catch talent and Hall of Fame bloodlines, Lance Zierlein said. The smooth athlete with adequate acceleration and the tools to become a more effective route runner in time. Feels defenders around him and catches with sudden hands and elevated focus when needed. His game needs polish, but Taylor has the ability to become a higher volume target for a team looking to upgrade at the F tight end spot. With Miami badly needing help on the offensive line, defensive lines, and cornerback, it's questionable whether Miami can afford to take a tight end in the first 2 days of the draft. See what happens if they would have handled their business and left their draft options open? Now you're pigeonholing yourself, where if a talent like this falls to you, you might have to reach on a need. Miami's first 3 picks are 13, 48, 98. Among those auditioning for the Dolphins on Friday, a slew of UM players, including receiver Sam Brown and Jacoby George, cornerback Daryl Porter Jr., and many others. Several FIU players, including tight end Josiah Miamin, Vanderbilt defensive back Tyson Russell. He's the son of former Dolphins linebacker and St. Thomas Aquinas athletic director Twan Russell. Louisiana Tech receiver Abdul Ibrahim, FAU defensive tackle Devontae Davis, and former Miami Northwestern running back Nate Noel, who ran for nearly 4,000 yards and 5.5 yards per carry, 21 touchdowns in college for Missouri and Appalachian State. I mean, hey, again, I go back to my point. If you would have handled your business properly and a guy like that falls in your lap, you're good to go. But you haven't done yourself any justice. And because you haven't done your roster justice through free agency, you have to take offensive line, cornerback, or defensive tackle. You got to take 2 of those with your first 3 picks. And double underline offensive line, because none of us want to see Larry Borum or Liam Eichenberg starting at left guard. Or why would we want to move James Daniels from right guard to left guard when that's where he settled in Pittsburgh? That's where he was having his great season last year before he got hurt. Why are we messing with that? You know? Please. Instead, for me, no. It makes no sense to do something like that. Moving and shifting people around because you got Liam Eichenberg. Give me a break. Liam Eichenberg isn't good enough to cause you to shift anyone around. That's just the fact of the matter. So, yeah. Anyways. Now, the Miami Dolphins, they are scheduled to meet, and they have a top 30 visit scheduled with an edge rusher in this draft. And remember, I've said edge is a sneaky, sneaky need for the Miami Dolphins. When you actually think about it, right? You know, even after taking Chop last year, Mo Kamara didn't get many reps in year one. Phillips and Chubb have injury histories and are returning from injuries. They missed out on signing Joey Bosa. Clearly, they see pass rusher, and an interesting guy that they are bringing in is South Carolina edge Kyle Kennard. All right. He won the Bronco Nagurski Award given to the best collegiate defensive player. He's a pretty damn good player too. He is a pretty damn good player. And I find it very interesting that, you know, obviously they're going to do 30 visits and they're just going to look at, like, you know, everyone that they can get their hands on. But I do find it interesting that Kyle Kennard is a guy that they're bringing in to look at. Now, Kyle Kennard just missed my top 15. All right? There's a couple guys I like I like David Walker out of Central Arkansas a little bit better than him. He made my top 15, which a lot of people probably wouldn't expect it, but I like David Walker a lot. So, you know, he just missed out, but man, you know, he's a decent player. He's a decent player. Now, where's he going to go? I think he's a late day 3 guy. I think he goes between the 5th and 7th round. I don't think he'll be a UDFA. I just don't. But yeah, I mean, that would be kind of, you know, that would be a little bit of an interesting ad, you know. I think Kyle Kennard, you know, when you look at what he does best, right? You know, he's a really good pass rusher, obviously. You know what I mean? He's pretty good in pursuit of ball carriers. Now, you know, he's a good pass rusher, but it's on a limited, you know, pass rush moveset. You know, you're not going to see this guy come out with pull it out, crazy bag of pass rush moves and counters to win. You know, I don't think he's the most fluid athlete. He's plays with a super high motor. You know, I do like the length to his frame. I think he's decent in run support. You know what I mean? And I do think he has enough twitchiness and short air explosiveness, especially out of his stance, to threaten blockers. But, you know, overall, I do think that's a day 3 pick. So I like Kyle Kennard. Hey, it is what it is. I do think that would be a day 3 guy. And you got to take your 30 visits and you got to see all the options. And not all 30 visits are going to be guys in the first 3 rounds. So, but yeah, Kyle Kennard, that is a interesting top 30 visit for the Miami Dolphins. I like it. And I've told y'all, I think edge is a sneaky need. Now, I wouldn't touch Mike Green, but, you know, I do think there's some guys where if they fell to you, it would be kind of interesting. You know, like Donovan Izuruku, like if he's there, That's very interesting. Landon Jackson, Princely from Ole Miss. I always butcher his last name. Oladipo from UCLA. David Walker, I mentioned from Central Arkansas. There's some interesting options outside of the first 2 rounds at edge, I think. So, KC, welcome to the Hall of Fame. Appreciate you for joining. TC on sticks. Can Jonas play left guard? I believe you probably mean Jonah Savannah. I'm going to guess that's what you mean. Yeah, he can play left guard for sure. Remember, he's played left tackle and right tackle as well as right guard in Arizona. So he's used to playing on that left side. He's played on the inside. He could make that move, transition to left guard, no problem. 110%. Jonas Savannah and Donovan Jackson at left guard would be absolute home runs. We just have to clean up the depth. But if everyone stayed healthy and you trotted out a line of Patrick Paul, Donovan Jackson, or Jonas Savannah, Aaron Brewer, James Daniels, or Austin Jackson, and they stay healthy, I think we got something. Because now Patrick Paul is your weak link, but he's not the blind side in this situation. Brewer has 2 solid guards on each side. And then another, with Savannah or Donovan Jackson, they offer you the flexibility where if you don't like what you see from Patrick Paul, but you're winning and you can't afford this guy to cost you stuff, you could kick Donovan Jackson or Jonas Savannah out to left tackle, and you could try to trade for a left guard before the deadline, or pick someone off the waiver, like, I don't know, a Dalton Risner or someone like that, and throw them in there. I really think, you look at those 2 guys specifically, Jonah Savannah as well as Donovan Jackson. I love the flexibility of being able to kick those guys out. I really do. Now, there's a lot of first-round buzz on Donovan Jackson because some teams may view him as a left tackle because of how he looked last year when he was kicked out by Ohio State. Which is why I said, if you go look at how Kiper's board fell, I would rather trade back and get Donovan Jackson. Add another pick between 48 and 98. Right? So, that's what I would do. But, yeah. Anyways. We'll see. I don't expect them to add another guard in free agency. I think they would have done it already. Now they could be sitting here and waiting for, the draft to play out, right? That's very possible. But you look at the guards that are available right now, and it's slim pickings. It really is. And then you got issues you got to deal with some of these guards, right? Like, are they going to want Risner? I've talked about this. Are they going to want Risner because of his history with Butch Berry? I don't know. And then you look at the other options that are out there right now, and meh. They're really not that great. So, we'll see. Guys, smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. We are only a few weeks away. We got a lot coming your way. So tomorrow night I'll be live with Dougley on this channel, 7 p.m. starting lineup. Thursday I'll be live with Neil Driscoll at 5 o'clock. Then I'll be dropping my safety big board. Next week will be tight end. I'm going to try and get tight end and quarterback done between now and Monday, Tuesday of draft week. Next week, I have another special guest coming on Wednesday. Y'all are not going to want to miss that. We're going to be talking the draft. That's going to be a really, really, really good show. I am going to have on another great draft mind, Damian Parson host of Locked On NFL Draft. He'll be here, and we'll be discussing the draft. That's going to be 1 p.m. next Wednesday. We've got a lot of content coming your way. And then obviously me and Neil will do our annual mock draft. So a lot of content coming your way. Be on the lookout for it. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. Appreciate all of y'all that donate. There's around 400 of you in the room. Smash that like button. If you're new, go ahead and subscribe. We're on our way to 20K, and I want to do a giveaway to 5 of you. So smash that like button. I will see y'all in the next one. And until then, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day. Have a fantastic rest of your day.